Mr. Moss, I'd like to impose on you. I have a letter here from Beverly Anderson, Chairman of the School Board, to Dr. Spence, the Superintendent of Schools. Would you just please read this for the public record for those who may not have seen it? That is an actual FOIA request response.
Okay, this was read at the meeting Tuesday night, I think. What's the date of this, Robert? So
It was just a few weeks.
Wednesday, March the 6th, 2019. I was like being honest about things. But I have read this, so I know it's actual email. Dr. Spence, as I mentioned on the dais last night, that's the school board part, I think there might be room in the building at John B. Guy to include them in the discussion of full-day kindergarten next year. I would love for you to call Beth Bonacci and ask her if there are any rooms available before we rule out John B. Guy. As you know, Mrs. Rye has asked that we consider from City Council only enough money to fund full-day kindergarten and exclude 3 schools you mentioned last night. I don't know what those were. She is suggesting the cost for bringing them into full-day kindergarten the next year would be absorbed into our budget without the extra funding from City Council. I fear that this move would gain momentum on the board, and then we would lose out on funding that we could use as we focus more on raising salaries next year. I understand that the cost for those 3 schools isn't quite as much, about $600,000. However, one of the reasons we need to have the funding available for all schools is that we hope to focus on salaries, steps, and even $600,000 would take away from our focus on that. Signed, Beverly Anderson, Chair of the School Board.
Thank you.
That's on Wednesday, March the 6th, 2019 at 9:24.
Thank you very much.
So again, this goes back to what I said about Dr. Fawcett. How is that not, you're taking money from this pocket and then your pool, and then you're using it somewhere
Well,
else?
the Dr. Fawcett thing was slightly different, because this is asking for a budget to be appropriated. He was executing an appropriated budget. He was moving, and the thing you talked about was the night when they were asking us to vote on allowing him to move money around. And I asked him a gazillion questions because I couldn't trace where the money was coming from that he was moving. And he said, "You're accusing me of financial mismanagement?" And I said, "You are correct." And 2 weeks later found out that they were in fact cutting money that they didn't have and moving it around like a check. And they had overspent $12 million that they did not really have. And obviously he resigned, and they had 9 school board members recall, because one, that was executing, and they were moving money from one place to another and trying to stay one step ahead of the wolf. And eventually, like any Ponzi scheme, the wolf gets inside, and then you get exposed. This is slightly different. This is a strategy of saying we are asking for money that we could fund, students first, but if we did what we say and walk the talk, we wouldn't have this $4.9 million for salaries. But if he would maybe take a sacrificial pay cut, and they didn't have 82 administrators and a chief of staff and all that stuff, I'm sure they could generate a couple $1 million. And we have seen documentation that they're out in town eating filet mignon and lobster tail dinners, and the receipts are out there, and it's in the public records. You can't make this stuff up. How can you go out and ask working families to pay higher taxes when you're out for a few people having a $500 dinner with alcohol at taxpayers' expense? I don't know why the public should, I don't know why they're not being prosecuted. But nonetheless, it just shows you the arrogance and the indifference for how hard people work for their money. I can tell you there's no council member doing that. I can assure you that that's not happening. That's crazy. But that just tells you if they're doing that and sole source contracting to someone who used to work for Dr. Spence at $4,000 a day for an $80,000 contract and it wasn't competed. And that's just one example. There's more. This is just lifting up the sheet. This isn't even seeing who's under them. And this is not right. And then they're asking people to pay more taxes. You've got to be kidding me. There's no moral high ground there, I can assure you. There might be a valley, but there's no high ground. And so, and people should be outraged, just on principle alone. And there's no contrition. There's not even any contrition that what they did was wrong. And it's just terrible. Anyway, that's the answer your question. I think that's the last one because it's 10:30. I'd like to end on time. I appreciate all the
Do we have any announcements, Julie?
Ta-da.
Our